All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Iyar, an anonymous sponsorship with Akaras Hatov to Hashem, for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us, and for Refuah Shlema for Devora Leah Bas Chaya Rivka. May we all be Zocheh Meretz Hashem to witness the imminent coming of Mashiach Mihira B'Yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsors: Hillary Jacobs in Kent, in memory of her daughter Shifra Bas Chana Dina Zichron Livracha. Our day of learning sponsor: Paul and Kathy Pollack, with a mazel tov to Elaine and Harold Schindel, parents of fellow member Stuart Schindel, on the birth of a great-grandson, to Avram and Ahuva Jaffe of Yerushalayim Yira Kodesh. Mazel tov, mazel tov. And our Daf Yomi sponsors for today: Michael and Rachel Turniansky, Leili Nishmas Shendel Bas Mordechai, Jeanette Turniansky, mother of Michael Turniansky. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamos Havan Aliyah, the families Ein Nechama, all of those who need a refuah shlema to have Shavon together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, our hostages in Meretz Hashem should be returned to their family, to their people, to their land. Our soldiers should have incredible success, and all of this should happen in Meretz Hashem Mihira B'Yameinu. And of course, again, we take the opportunity to recognize today being Yom Yerushalayim, the day in which we celebrate the reunification of our holy city, our eternal capital. We witnessed an incredible miracle 57 years ago when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us back our city, when we were able to hear the incredible words of Harabayis Biyadinu. And in Meretz Hashem, the same way that today represents a day of Nisim V'Niflaos for Klal Yisrael, Halavai. Those Nisim and Niflaos should continue to advance forward, should in Meretz Hashem continue to materialize into the greatest bracha, the bracha of Mashiach, the bracha of Geula, which we should be Zocheh Meretz Hashem to see, to experience, to be Makabo Mihira B'Yameinu. Amen. Well, so with that, let us begin. We'll come back in Meretz Hashem if we have time at the end a little bit to Yom Yerushalayim as well. Hope to chap. It's a shorter daf today actually, so hope to chap a couple of minutes at the end to Meretz Hashem speak a little bit about Yom Yerushalayim. So we'll say, but with this, let's begin. Today's daf is Tzadik Ches 98, and we are picking up on 97b. We left off 2 lines off from the bottom. So remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we had a very interesting case in the Mishnah of actually a number of variations, but all pretty much the same core case, which is I go ahead and I borrow either one animal, two animals, again, various different cases, but the point over here is one part of what I'm borrowing is a she'ela, is a borrowing, the other part is a rental. The animal dies. Now there could be a dispute as to which part of the day the animal dies, which of the animal dies, because remember again, there were a couple of different cases, but the Gemara essentially says the owner of the animal says it died during the period of she'ela, during the period of borrowing, right? Or for that matter, on the day of she'ela, or the borrowed animal dies, whichever variation that may be. So halacha l'maisa, and I say, the borrower / renter, say, I don't know. So the Mishnah said, well, in a case like that, what's the halacha? The halacha is I have to pay. The logic being bari v'shema bari adif, right? That when you have two claims, one a certain claim, one an uncertain claim, the certain claim carries the day. So since the owner of the animal is certain in claiming this was a borrowed animal, it was during the period of borrowing, and I am uncertain, I'm not contradicting, I'm just simply saying I don't know, therefore halacha l'maisa, I have to go ahead and pay. Okay, so the Gemara came along and said that what you see from here, you could apply this to a different case. I go over to Reuven and I say, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. Reuven says, I don't know. So what's the halacha? Reuven has to pay. Bari v'shema bari adif. I'm making a certain claim, Reuven's making an uncertain claim, and therefore my claim wins over Reuven's. The Gemara then pointed out that this seems to be a refutation of Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman holds differently. Rav Nachman says, if I go over to Reuven and I say to Reuven, you owe me $1,000, and Reuven says, I don't know, Rav Nachman says, Reuven doesn't have to pay. Why not? Uki mamona bechazkas marei. Leave money in the place where it's established. In other words, there's a chazaka. The chazaka is that whatever money Reuven has in his pocket belongs to Reuven. If I want to change that chazaka, I can do so, but I have to bring testimony, right? A simple claim that's not supported by, or is not bolstered by testimony, is not going to be able to go ahead and remove money from Ruvain. So therefore, again, the Gemara says the Mishnah clearly doesn't reflect the view of Rav Nachman. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, Ki d'amar Rav Nachman, ki gon sheish isek shvua beinehen. To which the Gemara says, Hachanami, ki gon sheish isek shvua beinehen. So the Gemara says, no. This could work. This case could work even according to Rav Nachman. Why? Because we'll say it could very well be that according to Rav Nachman, what's the Mishnah dealing with? A case of where already there was involvement with a shvua between the parties. Now take a look at the last Rashi on the daf. Sheish esek shvua b'neim shenischayv lo shvua b'tanoso v'eini yachal lishava da'ha'eini yodea ka'amar. So we'll say, so Rav Nachman says this Mishnah could even go according to me. How so? We could set this up as a situation where there is an obligation for a shvua, and because I can't take the shvua, therefore halacha l'maisa, I go ahead and I have to pay. The Gemara says, "Heichi dami esek shvua." What are you talking about? What is the case of esek shvua? Kid Rava. So also in accordance with what does Rava say? Top of Tzad Ches 90AA. Dama Rava. Marna li biyadecha. V'hala omer ein lecha biyadi elichamishim. So listen to this. So also here's the case. So I go over to Reuven. I say, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. And Reuven says, no, I only owe you 500. Vashar ini yodea. The rest I don't know. Now I will say, so just understand, what's interesting about this case is as follows. At first glance, this sounds like what? Sounds like what? Modib mixas, right? Partial admission. And when there's modib mixas, there is a shvua, right? Modib mixas, I make a claim against Reuven for 1,000. He admits 500, denies the remaining 500. You have to take a shvua on the remaining 500. This case is different. In this case over here, I'm coming over to Reuven and say, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. Reuven saying, I owe you 500 that I know of. The other 500, I don't know. I don't know. So I'll say, so what's the halacha in this case over here? So in this case, you can't swear. You can't swear. Reuven can't swear over the remaining 500. Why can't you swear? Why can't you swear? Because we'll say, you can't take a shvua on an uncertain claim. Remember, you will say, when is a shvua administered? A shvua is administered when I'm claiming, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. Reuven says, I only owe you 500, and I don't owe you the remaining 500. So now we have a dispute regarding the remaining 500. And remember, again, there's a whole svara, right? The whole svara is that Reuven really knows he does owe it to me. He's trying to buy himself some time. The shvua will force him to admit. So there's all of this logic. But a shvua is only administered when you have certain claims. When you have uncertain claims, you can't take a shvua. Think about this. What is Reuven going to swear? What is he going to swear? Right? I admit that I owe Silber $500. The other 500, I swear that I'm not sure. What? That's not a shvua. That's not a shvua. So therefore, I'm going to say something very interesting happens over here. So we'll say, interestingly enough, so in this kind of case, sometimes in halacha, where you can't take a shvua because of certain circumstances, so therefore, by definition, you pay. So Rav Nachman is suggesting over here that it could very well be that the situation over here is where I'm claiming something. The borrower / renter is admitting part of it. But on the other part of it, he's just simply claiming that he doesn't know. When he doesn't know, so the only answer to that is pay, because you can't take a shvua. You're not saying you don't know. But you're also not saying you do know. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, you just go ahead and you pay. Look at Rashi. Elachamishim, Rashi says over here, Havele modem makes us umechoyev shvua v'ala shar ve'eni yochol lishava da'amra eni yodea. Okay, so we'll say now the Gemara plugs this in. So again, I will say, just to be crystal clear about what we're doing over here, right? The Mishnah is creating a paradigm where the Mishnah explains that when you make a claim against someone and they simply respond to the claim with, I don't know, the halacha is they have to pay. All right, so if you don't know, and I do know, right? So in this case over here, I'm making a claim, Ruvain, it was the animal that was borrowed that died, right? Or the animal died during the period of she'ila, of borrowing, not during the period of schirus. And Ruvain's saying, I don't know. So then halacha is okay, you don't know, you have to pay. You don't know, you have to pay. The Gemara wanted to say this is not like Rav Nachman, because in general Rav Nachman says uki mamona becheskas mare, right? That leave money where it is. To which the Gemara says no. This could even be by Rav Nachman, because even by Rav Nachman, essentially you could create it as a case of moda b'mikzas, of a partial admission, where the person is admitting part of the claim. When it comes to the other part of the claim, they're saying I don't know, and therefore again halacha l'maisa they have to pay. Now let's set it up. Here we go. So mishkachas l'reisha b'beis v'seifa b'gimel. So most of the easiest way to illustrate this is you could establish the beginning of the Mishnah as talking about 2 animals, and the end of the Mishnah is speaking about 3 animals. Okay, now watch this. Reisha b'beis. So here we go. For example, the beginning of the Mishnah will speak about 2 animals. The Amrle beis paros masarti l'cha. So watch this. I say to Reuven, I gave you 2 animals. Palge Yomi b'shela upalge Yomi b'schiros. So the way this was set up was you have 2 animals. Part of the day, I say I gave you an animal, 2 animals for 1 day. First half of the day is she'ela, is a borrowing. Second part of the day is a rental. In other words, so the transaction morphed midday. For the first part of the day, you're a borrower. Second part of the day, you're a renter. Or inami chad yom b'sheila v'chad yom b'schiros. Or I'll say you can set up a little bit easier. I rented to Reuven. I gave Reuven 2 animals for 2 days. Right? On Wednesday it was borrowing, and on Thursday it was a rental. Okay. So what happened? Umesu tarvayu beidon sheila. I will say both of them, and I claim now both animals died. I say, Reuven, I'm claiming that both animals died during the period of she'ela. And I will say, now, if both animals go ahead and die during the period of she'ela, then what's the halacha? Then Reuven is chayiv for both of those, right? Because remember again, a shoel is chayiv for everything, assuming there was no baal of imo, because that's not the case over here. So my claim to Reuven is, Reuven, both of the animals died during the period of she'ela, and therefore you are chayiv to compensate me. V'amrei shoel, Reuven on the other hand says like this. Listen to what he says. Chada in be'ida she'ela meisa. Yep, I agree with you. One of the animals definitely died during the period when it was borrowed. Okay, whatever it was, whether it's the first half of the day when it was borrowed or the day that was she'ela, whatever it is, I agree with you. One of the animals died during she'ela. V'idach lo yedana iba idon she'ela meisa v'iba idon schiros meisa. And ultimately, again, but Reuven says about the other animal, the other one, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not sure what happened there. So we'll say, now watch this. So what's occurred over here? So now this is a moda b'mikzas, so to speak, right? So Reuven is admitting that one animal died during the period of she'ela. So therefore, again, he's certainly chayv on that one. What about the second one? Now normally, again, remember, moda b'mikzas, what does it do? When there's a partial admission, what does partial admission do? What does it do? It triggers a shavua on the remainder. In this case, I can't force Reuven to take a shvua. Why can't I force Reuven to take a shvua? Because he's making an uncertain claim. What's the shvua? What's the oath? What's the oath? And therefore, again, because Reuven can't swear. Why can't he swear? Because he's making an uncertain claim. So because he can't swear, therefore he pays. Which is a very interesting halacha. So because ultimately, again, you can't swear, therefore again he pays. All right, so seifa. So we'll say that's how we'll set up the beginning of the Mishnah. Seifa, look how we'll set up the end of the Mishnah. Listen to this. Begimel. The seifa of the Mishnah really can be set up with 3 animals. Watch this, it's very, very, very interesting. The Amrlei, Gimel paros nasati lecha. I say to Reuven, I gave you 3 animals, beis b'she'ela v'achas b'schiros. 2 of them were borrowing, and 1 of them was a rental. Umesu hani tarti de she'ela, and ultimately, again, the 2 that were borrowed died. So 2 out of the 3 animals died. My claim is that the 2 that died were the 2 that were borrowed. V'amrli shoel in. So watch this. I'll say now. Watch this. Reuven says yes. Yes to what? Chada de she'ela mesa. One of the borrowed animals absolutely died. Idach lo yedana id she'ela mesa v'dekaima deschiros he id deschiros mesa v'had dekaima deshe'ela he. So Reuven says like this: I agree with you that definitely one of the borrowed animal dies. What don't I know? I don't know about the other animal that died. Right? Was that a rental animal or was that a borrowed animal? And by extension, I don't know regarding the surviving animal. Is the surviving animal a rental animal, or is the surviving animal a barred animal. So we'll say, so again, a similar case, just more animals involved. So in this case over here, once again, Moed b'mikzas, Reuven is agreeing that one of the animals that died was a rental animal, and he's just simply unsure about the other one. He's not claiming that it's not. He's just simply saying he doesn't know. So on one hand, Moed b'mikzas, in which case you would be tempted to say, well, take a shvuah regarding the remainder, the second animal. He can't take a shvuah because he has an uncertain claim. And therefore, once again, we talk she'enu yachal l'shava mishalim, and therefore halacha l'maisa, since he cannot swear regarding the second animal, therefore halacha l'maisa, he goes ahead and he pays. Okay. So we'll say, so that's how we'll set this up according to even Rav Nachman. So even Rav Nachman, who normally says, Uki mamona becheskas marei, will essentially agree that in a case of moda b'miktzas, partial admission, where then again the person, the claimant, not the claimant, it's the opposite of the claimant. It's the person making the claim and the person, the defendant. The respondent, right? The respondent ultimately, again, is lodging an uncertain response, right? An uncertain response. So in that case, even Rav Nachman will agree, because you can't take a shvuah, therefore halacha l'maisa, you'll just pay. Okay, beautiful. Now the Gemara throws a little bit more into the mix of it, which is very, very interesting. Rabbi Shmuel Silber, dalit shomrim tzrichin kfira b'mikzas, v'al da b'mikzas. So we'll say, so now, Rabbi Shmuel says like this, that halacha l'maisa, in order for there to be a shvuah, Rabbi Bar Chama has an interesting formulation, or an interesting, we'll call it, or a criteria. He says that when it comes to the Dalet Shomrim, right, the various custodians, Shomer Chinim, Shomer Sachar, Socher, Shoel, in order for there to be an obligation of a shvuah, two things have to happen. There has to be a kfira, a denial of a certain part of the claim, and an admission to a certain part of the claim. There always has to be an admission and a denial. Now here's what's interesting, I will say. So according to Rabbi Chama, what we just, the model, the framework that we just created according to Rav Nachman would not work, right? Why wouldn't it work to generate the shvuah? Why not? Because there's no denial. Now again, there is an admission, right, or at least a partial admission, but there is no denial. So how, according to Rabbi Chama, how is Rabbi Chama going to come up with the case? Rashi says, just even take a look at the first part of Rashi. Rabbi Chama davar dalet shomer b'shvuas hamuros ban kigon shomer chinam lishava shnishpa v'shomer sachar lishpa sha'ansa v'shol lishava shemesa mimalacha tzrichin kfira. So say, so again, this Rabbi Bar Chama's logic is shvuah only comes about when, yes, there's moda b'mikzas, but also kfira b'mikzas. So you have to agree to something or admit something and deny something. How are you going to come up in these cases over here? So the Gemara says, Mashkachas, this is actually very interesting. Mashkachas reisha b'gimel v'seifa b'dalet. This is fascinating. So he'll set up the Mishnah as the reisha talking about 3 animals, and the Seifa talking about 4 animals. Remember again, Rav Nachman had it 2 animals, 3 animals. Rabbi Chama is going to have it 3 animals, 4 animals. Watch, it's really very interesting. So Reisha b'Gimel. So I'll say at the beginning of the Mishnah, it's talking about 3 animals. Watch this. Damrlei Gimel Paros Nasati Lecha. I say to Reuven, I entrusted you with 3 of my animals. Palgi di Yomi b'Shela, Palgi di Yomi b'Schiros. So the way this worked was as follows. Right, I say, Reuven, I entrusted you with 3 animals for a day, for 1 day. First part of the day was borrowing, she'ela. Second part of the day was schiros, rental. Okay, or inami chad yom b'she'ela v'chad yom b'schiros. Or you can set it up as, Reuven, I gave you 3 animals for 2 days. The first day was she'ela, was borrowing. The second day was a rental, schiros. All right, and what happened? Umesu gimel kulu be'idan she'ela. And all 3 died, and now my claim is, now all 3 animals died during the period of She'ela. And of course, again, as a result of that claim, what's the halacha? The halacha is that Reuven is going to be chayiv. So that's my claim. All 3 died during She'ela, and therefore you're chayiv. Varmalei, and now Reuven responds back and he says, listen. Varmalei shal, Reuven responds back, Chada lo hayu dvar me'olam. Oh, watch this. So first he says, Silber. Number one, there were only 2 animals. So, okay, so we'll say here it is. Remember, Rabbi Bar Chama has to set this up as dealing with what? Where there's a denial. There has to be some element of kfira. So Reuben's going to say, first of all, there weren't 3 animals, there were 2. So that, number 1, off the bat, he's denying 1 animal. The chada in ba'idon she'ela mesa, one of them I agreed died during the period of she'ela. V'idach lo yedana ibe idin she'ila mesa ibe idin schiras mesa. And the other animal, I don't know. I don't know. Did it die ultimately again during she'ila? Did it die during schiras? So I'll say, so now watch this. Watch what's happened. So on one hand, regarding one animal, Reuven denies that ever occurred. I never gave it to him. I never received a third animal from you. Number two, one animal, I agree, died during the period of she'ila. And the third animal, I don't know. So you have three elements over here: an admission, a denial, and ambiguity and doubt. So Rabbi say, so now based on this, so now because you have a denial and an admission, that's modeh b'miktzos, that should be chayv shvuah. But you can't swear. Why can't you swear? Why can't you swear? Because there's an uncertain claim. What is Reuven going to swear? What is he going to swear? Since he can't swear on animal number 3, therefore what? Or really on animal number 2. So there, animal number 3, right? Since he can't swear regarding that last animal that I'm not sure, again, did it die during she'ila or did it die during schirus? Therefore, he has to pay. Okay, interesting case. Seifa b'dalet, watch this, gets even more exciting. The Seifa ultimately, again, the Seifa will deal with 4 animals. How so? Here we go. I say, Reuven, I gave you 4 animals. Gimel b'she'ila, chad b'schirus. 3 animals were borrowed animals. 1 animal was a rented animal. Umesu hanach gimel d'she'ila. And all 3 of the borrowed animals died. Okay, so I say, so now watch this. Va'amarlei shol amud beis. Amarlei shol. Now Reuven responds. Number 1, chada lo hayu dvar me'olam. So first of all, one of these animals never happened. Never happened, right? The chada in the she'ila mesa, right? And yes, ultimately again, one of them, in fact, did go ahead and die during the period of she'ila. V'idach lo yedana idischiros mesa, lo yedana idischiros mesa udekayma de she'ila. The other one, I don't know. Did it die during the period of schirus, and therefore the last animal standing is a borrowed animal? Oh, the she'ela mesa udekayma schirus, or maybe it died during the period of borrowing, and the one that's left ultimately again is the rented animal. So I'll say, so once again, you have all the elements over here. What do you have? You have an admission, right? You have a denial. But again, so that would seem, according to Rabbi Chama, that would trigger the need for a shvuah. But because regarding the leftover claim, Reuven himself is uncertain, you can't swear over an uncertain claim. Therefore, because you can't go ahead and swear, therefore you pay. So we'll say, so bottom line, the beautiful part of the Gemara over here is everyone is agreeing that what's happening over here in the Mishnah is we have a claim here, right? I'm making a claim against Reuven, and the issue just is because Reuven can't swear, therefore he has to go ahead and pay. There are 3 different models, essentially, how this works. There's the Tanakama model, is what we'll call the Mishnah model, the Rabbanon model. And the Tanakama model is very simple. When I make a certain claim and Reuven makes an uncertain claim, Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. I'm making a definitive claim that it's the rented animal, that it's the borrowed animal that dies. Reuven says, I'm not sure. Therefore, Allah Chalamai say again, my claim is stronger, and therefore Reuven has to pay. That's it. That's the Tanakama. Rav Nachman understands over here that there's something else that's happening here. Rav Nachman understands, Rabbi says, dealing with the case has to be a case of multiple animals, where essentially what's happening? I come over to Reuven and say, Reuven, I give you one of the animals. I gave you 2 animals, right? They both died during the period of she'ila. Reuven says, one of them did, the other one I don't know. So therefore that's modeh b'miktzas. Once there's modeh b'miktzas, there's an obligation of shvuah, but you can't take a shvuah with an uncertain claim, and therefore again, since he can't take a shvuah, he goes ahead and he pays. That's Rav Nachman. So it's a modeh b'miktzas case where ultimately again, the defendant can't swear because he has a non-definitive claim. Rabbi Bar Chama, in order to trigger a shvuah, has to go ahead and set up a case of where there is an admission and a denial. And then, so we have that case. He set it up either with 2 animals, 3 animals, 3 animals or 4 animals, and therefore Allah Lamaisa. But in this case, so you have a denial, you have an admission, but then again you have the rest of the part that's ambiguous, unknown, uncertain, and because you can't take a shvuah regarding something uncertain, therefore you pay. So in all of these cases regarding the uncertainty, the Ruvain has to pay. The shaila just is, what are the mechanics of it? The Rabban of the Mishnah has one set of mechanics, Rav Nachman has a second set of mechanics, and Rami Bar Chama has a third set of mechanics. All right, incredible. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Ze Omer Shu'ula, the Ze Omer Schora, Yishava HaSocher Sheschura Mesa. So we'll say another, so here, going on in the Mishnah. So what happens? I lend the animal to Ruvain, right? So the animal dies. So my claim is Ruvain, it was the borrowed animal. Now, whatever case this says, remember again, I will say there are multiple iterations of the same case. I lent him one animal for a day. The first part of the day was a borrowing, the second part of the day was a rental. Or I lent him an animal for 2 days, right? One day it was a rental, the second day it was borrowing. Or I lent him 2 animals, one. So whatever the case is, the point is I'm making the claim that the loss was a loss that occurred. So let's just keep it easy. Let's keep it easy right now, right? I go ahead and I claim to Ruvain lent in 2 animals. One of them died. One of them was borrowed. One of them was rented. I claim that it was the borrowed animal that died. The borrowed animal that died. Okay, so now we'll say, so now, and what happens? Ruvain claims, no. It wasn't the borrowed animal, rather what was it? It was the rented animal. The rented animal that died. So what's the halacha? Now the Gemara says, now because Ruvain can't take a shvuah, therefore he pays. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So ultimately again, so Ruvain has to swear that it's the rented animal. It's the rented animal. The Gemara says, Va'amai. Now they will say, this is very interesting. Why would there be a shvuah? Mashetanu lo hodalo, umashahodalo tanulo. So we'll say, listen to this. Why should there be a shvuah? In general, again, I will say, Ruvain and I are not talking the same language, right? I'm claiming one thing, and ultimately, again, he's admitting something else. In general, take a look at Rashi. The Gemara says, "Va'amai mashetano lahodolo afagav da'okimna bekofer umoda hani mili Rav Nachman miu masnisin l'rafun of Rav Yehuda kidiktani va'amai yishava hare ein kan moda b'miktzas." So I'll say, now watch this, right? So I go ahead and I say to Ruvain, it was the borrowed animal that died. Ruvain says it was the rented animal that died. So the Mishnah says Ruvain has to swear to that effect. Here's the issue. In general, we'll say, Shavua, at least according to our Mishnah, is generated when there's a motive mixas, there's a partial admission. The problem over here is there is no partial admission. Why? Because that which Ruvain is admitting to is not that which I am claiming, right? I'm claiming that it's the borrowed animal that died. Ruvain is responding, it's the rented animal that died. Our claims are misaligned. Essentially, what's happening over here is I'm claiming A, he's admitting B. So how does that generate the obligation for a shvuah? Amar ula ayedei gilgul. This is interesting. So we'll say the way this works is the Gemara says you're right. So how do I get Ruvain to swear? How do I get Ruvain to swear? And the answer is Gilgul Shvuah. So remember again, we've learned about Gilgul Shvuah. Gilgul Shvuah essentially says is that once you are already swearing about something, we could kind of add on a whole bunch of other stuff to that Shvuah, are claims that themselves would not normally generate an obligation for Shvuah. For example, Damarlei. So I said, okay, Ruvain, you're claiming that it's the rented animal that died? Fine. Ishtabali ezo mias tikidarka mesa. So I can say to Ruvain, okay, you're claiming that the animal died during the period of Schirus? Fine. So swear to me that the animal died of natural causes. Meaning essentially swear to me that you are not negligent. So I could do that. In other words, I will say, remember again, we've seen this before. Right? In general, I will say, just play this case out. Right? I deposit the simplest of cases, right? I go ahead and I give something to Ruvain to watch. Ruvain is a shomer chinam, right? Now, a shomer chinam has diminished responsibility. So what happens? I come back, right? I give Ruvain my cow. Ruvain says, I'm so sorry, Baruch MS. The cow died. Natural causes, right? It was happy, it was content, had a smile on its face, surrounded by its loved ones, right? But it's no longer in this world. It's no longer, but it's in a better place. Now, I will say, technically speaking, Ruvain is pater. But remember again, that claim by itself is not enough. Ruvain has to swear to that. In other words, I could take Ruvain's word if I want, but I could also force him to take a shvuah. So now watch, this is actually interesting. So now what's happening over here is I gave Ruvain 2 cows, right, to watch. One a rented one and one a borrowed one. One of them died. I'm claiming it's the borrowed cow. Reuven's claiming that it's the rented cow. Now, really, what I want is for Reuven to swear that it was the rented cow, not the borrowed cow. But I can't get him to take a shvu on that because, again, our claims are misaligned. So what can I do? I can say, Reuven, okay, I'm going to go with you. You're saying it's a rented cow, no problem. Swear that the cow died of natural causes. Right? That you didn't misappropriate, that you didn't misuse it, that you didn't abuse it, whatever else, swear that it died of natural causes. Now that I could do. Now watch this. So the Gemara says, Umigu de mishtaba de kedarka mesa, mishtaba nami de schora mesa. It's interesting. And once he's already swearing that the animal died of natural causes, he could what? Also swear that it was the rented animal that died. So in other words, the shvuah that he could be obligated in is to swear that the rented animal died of natural causes. And once you're swearing about that, also including that I swear that it was the rented animal and not the borrowed animal. Okay, incredible. So I'll say this is interesting. The last case of the Mishnah was, let's say again, same case, all the cases are the same. I gave Reuven two animals, one was rented, one was borrowed, and one of them died. And what happened? And neither of us know which animal died. So what's the halacha? The Mishnah said, Yachloku. We split the value of the deceased animal. So the Gemara says, Hamani, whose opinion is this? That says Sumchos Amar Mamon Hamotl B'Safek Cholkin. So also you've seen this many times as well. Sumchos holds that Mamon Hamotl B'Safek, whenever you have a doubt about money, right? Who is entitled to money? And again, neither of them has a definitive claim. Cholkin, we split it. They both say, so just remember again, that statement is part of a raging machlokes. What's the raging? What's the disputants, right? What's the other side of that? What's the other side of that argument? The other side of the argument is uki mamona becheskas marei. No. In other words, money is only taken from a party if you have definitive proof that somebody has to pay. If you don't have definitive proof that someone has to pay, leave the money where it is. Leave the money where it is. Simcha says no, and you have doubt and no one has a definitive claim, split it. So the Mishnah that says over here, one of the animals died. We're not sure which one died, so just split it. Split it between me and Reuven. That's Sumchos Maman Amotel B'Safei Cholkin. Okay, incredible. So by Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel, Shalom B'Bailim, Sachar Shalom B'Bailim. So we'll say this is a very interesting case. So kind of extending the Mishnah a little bit. Watch what's happened over here. So we'll say, so I go ahead, let's reverse the rules here a little bit, right? So I borrow a cow from Reuven. Now both say, now interestingly enough, I borrowed it with him. Now we're going back to a previous discussion. I borrowed it with him, and it's Baal of Imo. I'm a smart guy. I paid attention in yesterday's daf, and I remember what did the Gemara say? If you're a smart guy and you're borrowing an animal, what should you do? Ask the owner for a cup of water, right? So I heeded the advice of the Gemara. So I'm borrowing a cow from Reuven. I said, Reuven, you know what? As we're finalizing this transaction, do me a favor, right? Bring me a Perrier, right? Bring me a Fiji, right? Bring me some Fiji water, right? So let's go ahead and bring me something. Bring me something to drink. And Reuven brings it to me. So now I'll say, so now what happens? So now I have Baal of Imo. So now I've borrowed the animal with Reuven and my employee. Now we'll say, what does that do? What does that do if it's Baal of Imo? What does that do? Potter. Now essentially I have a get out of jail free card. Now whatever happens to that animal, I am covered. So now watch this. Now both say, now here's where it gets interesting. Sachar shalom b'baylim. Now both say, now after that duration of, so let's say I borrow it for a week. And after the week is over, I say, Reuven, you know what, I'd like to extend. I want to rent it for another week. So now I extend the duration of my use of the animal, but now it's a different arrangement. It's no longer a she'ela, it's no longer a borrowing. Instead, what is it? It's a schirus. It's a rental. So I'll say, so now, mahu, what is the halacha? So I'll say, so now, let's play this out. So what happens? Week number one is a she'ela, and it's a she'ela balavimo. Week number two is a schirus. So I'll say, so now let's say something happens to that animal over the course of week number two that would normally make me liable. So what's our she'ela? Our she'ela over here is, does the baal of imo of she'ela extend into the schirus? Which essentially is another way of saying Do we view the schiros as an extension of the sheila? Do we view the rental as an extension of the borrowing, right? And therefore, again, the same baal of imo that was present by the sheila should be present by the schiros. Because remember, again, baal of imo works by everything, right? It has the same Torah by everything. So can we extend that to schiros? Mao. So mi amrina, here the Gemara works it through. Mi amrinan sheila lechuda kaima uschiros lechuda kaima. Do we say no? Borrowing and renting are two different transactions, and therefore, again, the renting is not considered to be an extension of the borrowing, and therefore there's no patur of baal of imo during the duration of the rental. Or dilma schiros b'she'ela meshach shaychi, or maybe not. Maybe not, Rabbi say. Maybe at the end of the day, the schiros is considered to be an extension of the she'ela. And Rabbi say, now why would the rental be considered to be an extension of the borrowing? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here. Rashi says, O Dilma, schiros b'sheila meshach shaycha. Rashi says, Kol chiyuv socher digneva va'aveda yeshnan b'shoel v'lo hosif klum umachmas meshicha rishona ba'ulo v'ahi bailim haviu pater. Shabbos, here's what's interesting. So you can make two arguments. Argument number one is the idea that as a socher, I have, or everything, all of the responsibility and liability I have as a socher was also present during she'ela, right? In other words, there's nothing new. And in fact, what schiros represents is diminished responsibility, right? So I have diminished, but the same responsibilities that I had during she'ela, I have during schiros. Number one. That's number one. Number two, I will say there is no new act of mashiach. Remember again, when I borrowed the cow from Ruvain, I did an act of Mashiach. I went ahead and I took it towards me, right? I pulled it towards me, Mashiach. That's how I acquired it. There is no new act of Mashiach that's done by schiros. So therefore, again, the same Mashiach that I did by she'ela is the same Mashiach that works for schiros. So maybe because I did no new proprietary act, and the responsibilities of schiros are also found in she'ela, maybe the schiros is considered to be an extension of the borrowing, the rental is considered to be an extension of the borrowing, and therefore the same patur of baal of imo that existed by the she'ela, by the borrowing, should devolve upon the schiros as well. Such a good shayla. So the Gemara says, or not, or the other side is, no, there are two different arrangements. So the Gemara says, maybe the schiros, maybe the rental is considered to be an extension of the borrowing. Because they both say, again, as a socher, I'm chayiv in many of the same things that I was chayiv ultimately again as a shoel. Okay, so imtim salom. So let's take the question a bit further. Imtim salom schira b'she'ela meishach shaychi. So I'll say, if you want to say that in fact, a period of rental could be an extension of she'ela. So the Gemara says that what about the reverse case? Sachra b'bailim. I'll say, what happens if I started out as a rental? I rent the cow from Ruvain, but again, at the same time, when I rented it from him, as we were finalizing that transaction of the rental, I asked him for a cup of water. He brought me a glass of water, and therefore, again, the schiros started with baal of imo. Okay, baal of imo, and then I will say what happened after the week of schiros. I extended the relationship, but it turned into a sheila. I borrowed it. So sheila below bailim mahu. So I say, now what's the halacha in this case? Do we view, once again, it's the same question. Do we view the she'ela as an extension of the schiros? And do we say that just as the schiros was with baal of imo, so to the she'ela is with the baal of imo? So she'ela b'schiros, vaday lo shaycha. So we'll say, on one hand we could say, you can't view she'ela as an extension of schiros. Why not? Because they both say she'ela is a much higher level of responsibility. So in other words, to say that schiros is an extension of she'ela, I could do that. Why? Because I could claim that like schiros is like a derivative, right? That rental is a derivative of borrowing. But you can't say that borrowing is a derivative of rental because borrowing is a much higher state of responsibility. So on one hand, she'ela b'schiros vadeh lo shaycha. So on one hand, maybe I could say like this: there's no way that you could look at the borrowing as an extension of the act of rental, and therefore there's no patur baal of imo. O dilma kevan de shaycha b'miktsas kiman de shaycha b'kula dami. Or maybe no, since she'ela does share common features, Since she'ela does share common features with schirus, right? There are certain elements of responsibility that overlap, right, with both of these shomrim. So maybe halacha l'maaseh you can view it as an extension. All right. Im tim salomar lo amrinon kevan d'shaycha b'mikzas kiman d'shaycha b'kuladami. So I'll say if you adopt the approach that you can't view borrowing as an extension of rental. Okay, the Gemara says, then I have the following question. She'elu b'baylim v'sachar shelo b'baylim. What if, Jose, watch this case. What about if I borrowed from Ruvain, right? And again, same case. When I borrowed from him, it was Baal Avima. I asked him for a glass of water. He was giving me the glass of water, so now it's She'elu b'baylim, okay? Now, watch this. I borrowed Ruvain's animal for a week, his cow for a week. Then after that, we transitioned, right? As the Gemara says, I'm sorry, v'sachar shelo b'baylim. Then I rented it for a week after that. So week 1 was borrowing with Baal Avimo. Week 2 was a rental without Baal Avimo. And then I will say, watch this. V'chazer v'shala. Week 3, I then borrowed it again. So I've got a she'ela, schira, she'ela. Borrowing, rental, borrowing. Now I will say, but what happened? Only the first act of borrowing had an active Baal of Imo. Right? Because remember again, at the time that I borrowed it, I asked Reuven for a glass of water. He brought it for me. It was Baal of Imo. So I was saying, now what's the shaila? The shaila is, what do you do in this case? Ma'u, hadr asi li she'ela l'duchta. So I was do we say that since, okay, so maybe even if you're going to say that schiros, that rental, is not an extension of she'ela, and therefore during the rental period, ultimately again, there is no claim of Baal of Imo. Maybe when you come back to the she'ela, we view that as full circle, and the second she'ela, the second act of borrowing, should be related to the first act of borrowing. And just as the first act of borrowing had Baal of Imo, so to the second act of borrowing will have Baal of Imo as well. O Dilma, afsika le schirus, beni ubeni, right? Or maybe no, you can't. The second act of schirus is not a continuation of the first. Why? Why not? It was interrupted by an intervening period of schirus, of rental. So therefore, again, she'ela 1 and she'ela 2 have nothing to do with each other, because halacha l'maaseh, again, there was an intervening act or an intervening period of schirus. Okay? So the Gemara says, okay, then I'll ask a follow-up question. Sachra b'baylim. So what about the reverse case? I rented the animal, and when I rented the animal again, it was Baal of Imo. It was Baal of Imo. Okay, so Sachra b'baylim. V'shala, so as I say now, I rented it, and again, Reuven was bringing me my glass of water when I rented it. Fine, so that's Baal of Imo. I will say now, what happened? V'shala. So I rented it for a week. After the week of the rental, what happened? I borrowed it. I borrowed it for a week. V'shala, v'chazer v'sachra. Then I went back, and in week number 3, I rented it again. So we'll say, so it's a rental, borrowing, rental. Right? Schirus, she'ela, schirus. The first schirus was with Baal of Imo. So we'll say, Ma, what's the halacha? So mi amrinan asile schirus l'duchta. So we'll say, do we view schirus number 2 as an extension of schirus number 1? So do we view again the third week 3, as an extension of week 1? And just like the first schirus was Baal of Imo, so too the second schirus will be Baal of Imo as well. O dilma af sikile she'ela beni ubeni. Or maybe no, maybe halacha l'maisa. Maybe halacha l'maisa. Ultimately, again, the she'ela in the middle intervened between schirus 1 and schirus 2. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, you can't claim any Baal of Imo by schirus 2. And the answer the Gemara gives, teku. Now, interestingly enough, the Rambam doesn't apply this teku to all of the cases, right? He says, for example, listen to this. This is in Hilchos Shila Pikadon, Parak Beis Halacha Yod. The Rambam writes, Shala b'baylim usachar shelo b'baylim. This is actually very interesting. So the Rambam writes over here that if you borrowed an animal with Baal of Imo, and then ultimately, again, after the period of Sheila, you extended it with a period of Schirus. So I'll say the halacha is pater sha'schirus tali b'sheila. So Rambam understands over here that halacha l'maisa, we do view schirus, rental, as an extension of borrowing. The logic behind that is because whatever you're obligated as a socher, you are already obligated as a shoel. So we could look at schirus as a derivative of she'ela, and therefore, interestingly enough, if the she'ela began with Baal of Imo, that Patur of Baal of Imo will apply even to the schirus. But the reverse is not true. If you begin as a socher, right, as a renter, and then you go into she'ela, And then you go into She'ela. So again, even though the Schiros was with Baal of Imo, Halach L'maisa, we do not apply that to the She'ela because we don't view She'ela as an extension of Schiros. So again, Schiros can be viewed as an extension of She'ela. She'ela cannot be viewed as an extension of Schiros. And therefore, if you started She'ela with Baal of Imo, then went into Schiros, the P'tur of Baal of Imo will apply to the Schiros. But if you began with Schiros and there was Baal of Imo and then went into She'ela, that P'tur will not extend into the She'ela. Very interesting. What the Rambam does say is these other cases, the three-pronged cases of like She'ela, Schiros, She'ela, Schiros, She'ela, Schiros, the Rambam says that's a suffix. That's a suffix. What exactly the status is over there? All right, let's take a look at the Mishnah quickly. Mishnah says as follows: Hasholas haparav v'shalcha lo biyad bino. We've actually seen this before. So Hasholas haparav v'shalcha lo biyad bino, biyad avdo, biyad shlucho. So we'll say, so now listen to this. Actually, we'll say, you know what we'll do is, so much to do, so little time. All right, good. You know what? Let me spend a few moments in Yom Yerushalayim. We'll pick up with this Mishnah Metzia Hashem tomorrow. We'll start in the sugya. We'll say just a word about Yom Yerushalayim. Sorry. So we'll say, in general, one of the difficulties that we encounter on Yom Yerushalayim for many of us, similar to one of the difficulties we encounter on Yom HaAtzmaut, we'll say, is the idea of appreciating something that you've never lived without. So Yom Yerushalayim is a little bit different, right? Because Yom Yerushalayim is much more contemporary for many, right? So many know a world in which Klal Yisrael did not have shlita, did not have control over the holy city of Yerushalayim. So we'll say, what is it exactly that we're celebrating? So obviously on the most basic level, we're celebrating the fact that Baruch Hashem in 1967, right, 57 years ago, we were Zoche Baruch Hashem to reclaim Jewish ownership over Yerushalayim. To be able, as we said before, to say the words Harabayas Biyadenu, right? That literally, again, the Temple Mount, and even to recognize today, that as much as it is not yet our Beis HaMikdash that stands on the site, the holy site on the Harabayis, but nevertheless, there's Jewish autonomy over that site, right? There's a Jewish army that patrols that site. And at the end of the day, it is Mamish Biyadenu, is within our hands. But on a deeper level, what it comes down to in Yerushalayim is something I think much more profound. There's a beautiful Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says this is in Perek Hey, Mishnah Hey. Perek Hey, Mishnah Hey. So the Mishnah says, Asara Nisim Nasu Lavosinu Beis HaMikdash. There were 10 miracles that happened to our forefathers in the Beis HaMikdash. And again, the Mishnah goes through a whole list. The last of the miracles was, V'lo Amar Adam Tzarli Hamakom Sha'alin B'Yerushalayim. This is beautiful. A person never said that there's not enough space for me to stay in Yerushalayim. Okay? So again, B'Pashas Rabbeinu Yonah, Rashi, Bartanur explained that what's referring to is during the Regalim, right? Because you think about this just a moment. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, everyone is converging on Yerushalayim. So how do you fit the entire population of Klal Yisrael into a city? Into one city. So the Mishnah seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, there was a miracle that a person never said. No one ever said, there's no place for me to sleep, there's no place for me to be. There was a miracle that Yerushalayim somehow had space for everyone. What's beautiful about this, so again, you could look at this as a miraculous idea, and this almost fits in line, it almost seems to be connected to the miracle that in the Beis HaMikdash, Omdim Sefufim, people would stand packed shoulder to shoulder, Umishtachavim Revachim. When they prostrated themselves, there was space for everyone to prostrate. So it sounds like what the Mishnah is saying is the same way that somehow in the Beis HaMikdash, there was an expansion of geographic area, somehow on a miraculous level to allow bowing down. So too in Yerushalayim, somehow, the city itself expanded to be able to go ahead and accommodate everyone. The Chassam Sofer says something amazing. The Chassam Sofer says, no, there wasn't a miracle. He says Yerushalayim was jam-packed. It was jam-packed. So what does the Mishnah say? V'lo amar Adam tzarli hamakom. No one ever complained. No one ever complained that there was too much traffic in Yerushalayim. No one ever complained that it's too crowded by the Beis HaMikdash. No one ever, again, was it crowded? Absolutely. Were there traffic jams? Absolutely. Did you have to wait online in every single place? Unequivocally, yes. V'lo amar adam tsar li hamakom. No one ever complained about this dynamic. So what's the pshat? Jews not complaining, right? Jews not complaining, especially, I will say, we complain even when it's not legitimate, right? Alachas kama v'kama when it is legitimate. How could it? What's the pshat? What's the pshat, right? There's traffic anywhere else. There's congestion anywhere else. There's too packed anywhere else. I'm going to complain. But in Yerushalayim, no one complains. There's a beautiful medrash. The medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went ahead and created Adam Arishon from afar, from dirt. So the Medrash says, where was the afar taken from? Where was the dirt gathered from? And the Medrash says the dirt that created Adam was created ultimately again from Yerushalayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took dirt from Yerushalayim and created Adam Arishon. There's two versions of the Medrash. One version of the Medrash just says Yerushalayim. The other version of the Medrash says from Harabayis. Harabayis took the dirt to create Adam Arishon from Yerushalayim. So I will say, what does that tell you? What that tells you is that Yerushalayim is the source of everything, right? Humanity, it's not just Jewish people, right? It's not just Klal Yisrael. Humanity as a whole sources itself from Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Life comes from Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. I was saying, you know that feeling when you come into Yerushalayim? You know, if you're driving into Yerushalayim and you see that big sign, Bruchim Habayim Yerushalayim, right? You come into, what's the feeling that sweeps over you? What's the feeling? It's a feeling of tranquility, right? Why? What's the tranquility, right? Because there's going to be snarling traffic, right? And there's going to be all this stuff, and there's going to be crazy. So what's the tranquility? It's the tranquility of coming back to the source. When you come back to the source of something, it's kind of like, when you're an adult and you go home, right? Maybe you get to visit your parents and you go home. There's a certain tranquility of walking into the home in which you grew up in. There's a certain tranquility about going back to your source. When a Jew goes back to Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, I'm going back to the source. Now let's say this is why a person davens, has the schus to go Shabbos night, to daven at the Kosel, especially Friday night. You go to the Kosel Friday night. Now let's say, if there's one thing you could count on when you go to the Kosel Friday night, what is it? What is it? You are going to get shoved, jabbed, pushed, moved, and everything else. Right? Let's say, if you were standing in shul, right, and you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and somebody were essentially like to check you as if they were playing hockey with you, right? Somebody were to push, check you, right? You wouldn't be shkayach, right? Good Shabbos, right? It's not. Let's say you'd be pretty annoyed, and by the way, understandably so. Understandably, come on, what's the matter with you? Like, watch where you're going, and yet again, I will say something interesting. It's almost like when you daven by the kosel, it's almost as if what you do is, I think it's even subconscious. You relax your body a little bit so that you're a little bit more like Gumby-ish, you're a little bit more malleable, right? Say pushed over here, pushed over there, right? I'm a little more flexible so that I can almost move with the waves of the people. Why is it so easy for me to do that there and yet so difficult for me to do that elsewhere? And the answer is because I'm back where I'm supposed to be. Yerushalayim is where we're supposed to be. Yerushalayim is the source of everything. Yerushalayim is where it all began, not just for Klal Yisrael, but where it all began for all of humanity. Yerushalayim is the place from where we were created. And therefore, I will say for many of us, the only place where we experience true life tranquility is in Yerushalayim, because that's home. That's the beginning. That's the source. So I'll say, so do we celebrate on this Yom Yerushalayim? Again, like I always say with these days, however you want to celebrate it, that's between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But just understand what we are celebrating. What we're celebrating is that 57 years ago, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the schos to once again assert our rightful ownership over the source, the cradle of humanity, the source of everything in this world, the source of Kedusha, the source of life, the source of the very dirt and earth which we were created from. All of that comes from our holiest of cities. So I will say, we should make sure to say, Hodu Hashem ki tov ki le'olam chasdo. Because when you're reunited with your source, there's a certain power, there's a certain energy, and yes, I would say there's a certain tranquility that comes as a result of that. We are a different people now that we have Yerushalayim. We are a different nation now that we have Yerushalayim. And Abba said, we know that deep down this current war in which we are in, you hear the stories that when the soldiers have to go house to house, in these towns and in these villages and in Gaza, right? They say hanging on every single wall is a picture of Al-Aqsa, is a picture of Yerushalayim. This is not a war over Gaza, and this is not a war over Rafah. This, at the end of the day, this is a war like every other war over Yerushalayim. Because I will say what the war is always about is Yerushalayim. Because at the end of the day, what everyone wants is to control that beginning, is to control that source, is to control that place from which mankind was created, because the world recognizes the power and the energy that is contained in that place. And we are Zocha, that the Ribono Shel Olam gave it to us. He gave it to us thousands of years ago. He re-gave it to us 57 years ago. And we should be Zocha Mirz Hashem, to be proper guardians, to treat it with respect, to treat it with Kedusha, to build it up to the best of our ability, and most of all, we should be Zocha Mirz Hashem, to see the source rebuilt into what it truly could be. The home of our third Beis HaMikdash, the home of Klal Yisrael. May we be Zocha Mirz Hashem to come together with our families, with our friends, for Aliyah Beregel. May we be Zocha Mirz Hashem to bask in the beautiful glory of our third Beis HaMikdash with the Mashiach, with Tchias HaMesim, Meher Rabbi Ameinu. Amen.